race in the world. It tests the driver's skill, bravery, and above all, patience. Juan Montoya scored 4 wins in 9 races. He's led over half of all road course laps. But Road America champions Michael Andretti and Dario Franchitti, along with the other points contenders, have one thing planned today: stop Montoya.
In years past, the teams focused on fuel strategy, trying to get the most out of this race in 2 stops. But now, with these extra 20 miles, it's a 3-stop race.
Starting alongside. 4 wins to his credit. This rookie is halfway to the kart record for wins in a single season.
One of the intriguing aspects about this lineup of Montoya and Andretti together in the front row takes us back to early in the season, Paul. Remember the confrontation on the high-speed oval at Twin Ring Motegi in Japan? A wheel-banging incident, then a big crash, then a head-to-head confrontation between the 2 drivers, and a head-to-head confrontation between the 2 owners. They're about to grab a green flag on a 200-mile-per-hour straightaway with a hard right-hander down at turn number 1. This really bears close watching.
In the second row, it's Gilles de Ferran and Newman Haas driver Christian Fittipaldi. Now de Ferran, on the strength of a win and a second-place finish in the last 2 races, is now second in the overall point standings. In the third row, it's Adrian Fernandez and Jimmy Vasser.
And for Jimmy Vasser, he has a new crew chief this weekend. They decide to reorganize the team to try and get Jimmy Vasser back up on top. Rick Davis comes from Juan Montoya's car, fills the position for crew chief for Vasser. Adrian Fernandez, he started the weekend with a very low downforce setup. He said, hey, I was over 210 miles an hour on the straightaways, but I couldn't hang the corners. They put the downforce back in. He's happier and he's faster.
In the fourth row, Dario Franchitti will start inside of Greg Moore. In row 5, it's Paul Tracy and Tony Kanaan. The sixth row, Cristiano D'Amata, the fastest Toyota, and Brian Herta. In row 7, Mauricio Guzman and Max Pappas. The eighth row, Mimo Gidley and Roberto Moreno. In row 9, Patrick Carpentier and Michel Jourdain Jr. Al Unser Jr. is inside the 10th row with Elio Castroneves on the outside. Unser Jr. is winless in his last 59 starts. He won here in 1996, or nearly did, but then he blew an engine while leading on the very last lap of the race. In the 11th row, P.J. Jones and Scott Pruitt. In row 12, Robbie Gordon with Richie Hearn alongside. And the 13th row, Walter Salles and Luis Garcia Jr. Now the race here today, as suggested, 5 laps longer at 55 laps. And on the long straightaways, they will get an upwards of 210 miles an hour.
And in years past, Michael Andretti, without a doubt, has always been the quickest on starts, restarts, on cold tires. He's been one of the best. But now we've seen Juan Montoya, great starts, great restarts in Cleveland in difficult conditions, blindingly fast. The opening lap should be tremendous between these two cold tire experts.
The leaders are already through Canada Corner behind the pace car, the pole sitter Michael Andretti. Second time this year that we've seen him up here at the front. Michael clears the visor a final time, makes sure his balaclava is ready. Out from under the bridge, turn 14 lies ahead. They will come into formation here. Acceleration will begin as they leave this corner and climb a rather steep hill up toward the starting line. You can see the road off to the pits on your right. Front row again. Andretti on pole, Montoya alongside. A pair that has not been without conflict this year. Over the top of the hill, and here we go. Montoya drops in behind Andretti. Now Montoya tries to work the outside. Wow, they spread wide. One car totally off. And 3 cars into the gravel pit. 4 now. Scott Pruitt down to the inside. So 4 cars in trouble on the start.
Max Pappas, Paul, on the right of the screen there.
And down in turn 2, you also have Gugelman in trouble, trying to figure out who the other is. This is entirely separate from what you just saw. So full course caution comes out immediately. Pace car will pick up the field again. They were clean on the front rows through, and then suddenly a car off on the right side. And he lost it while he was out there, and then once he lost it, he took much of the field with him.
It's Castroneves, Paul. Looks like Mamo Gidley, Max Pappas, and Scott Pruitt involved. We also saw Paul Tracy make a great move down the inside in the grass. This is coming down into turn 3 now. D'Amata sideways and Gugelman coming off the outside of turn 3. Years past, Paul, we've seen them manage to get through turn 1. We've always seen in the years past problems in turn 3. Well, this year we got both corners involved. And we also saw that Montoya got around Andretti. We'll see if we can find out where that happened.
So 2 turns, 6 cars on the very start of the race of a 55-lap run at Road America. We'll regroup and be back with you in just a moment. Well, the straightaway quiet for the moment, and the problem is that we have gone red flag as a result of 2 separate incidents in the first 2 corners that affected 6 different cars. Now, this was the first as the green flag flew. Now, Paul Tracy came over and into the dust. He was not the issue. Further up the field, there is Helio Castroneves. He gets onto the grass, loses it, and as the field charges into turn 1, he takes several cars out with him. The good news is we have seen all of those drivers out and standing. As they went downhill toward the second turn, this is Cristiano D'Amata. Now, he's coming downhill, and watch what happens to him.
He's through turn 1 cleanly on the inside. Gets a little sideways coming off, but watch what happens as he enters turn 3. Looks like he had some contact with Brian Hurd on the left side of the screen there. Turned the car sideways and put him back into the gravel trap.
And that, of course, affected Mauricio Gugelman as well. Now, the cars, as we look at those involved in this crash, under the rules, because this happened on the first lap, you can move to your backup car. So that's why you see people like Helio Castroneves running back for the pit area as the crews scramble to get their backup cars in place. Let's go to Jan.
Well, for Helio Castroneves, he runs down pit road while the crew right now has fired up the Mercedes power plant of the backup car. It is standard practice for all these teams to have the backup car set up in an identical configuration to what the primary car was. It did not take them long at all to get the backup car out. Helio Castroneves is only about 10 pits from his car, and they will hopefully have him all ready to go. Gary?
Same for Mauricio Gugelman and his crew. You can see that there are rain tires on at the moment. That'll have to be changed. There were 12 men swarming over this car just moments ago. Now they're down to a handful, just bolting the wing into place. They'll roll it back out onto the pit line. Here come the slick tires now off to our left. They'll be getting them ready to go on momentarily. What a weekend it's been for Mauricio Gugelman. He had boost problems. He had fuel pressure problems. He had an accident yesterday. And now in the opening lap of the race, he has an accident. Backup car, however, ready to go. And here they go, rolling out to the pit line.
And the good news is that they do have several of the Gale cranes that can get them off the course quickly. Both D'Amata and Scott Pruitt appear to have been restarted and are heading back to the pits. Well, our first Toyota Spotlight of the day appropriately looks at turn 1 and the troubles there. During the practice for this particular event, Patrick Carpentier got himself in trouble. That was on Friday, and it was fairly spectacular trouble. He locked the brakes heading down to turn 1. The gravel pit caught the side of his tires and flipped him 5.5 times. And he just climbed out of the car, calmly walked away, went back to racing. Then just moments ago, when Helio Castroneves got sideways, up in turn 1, it ended up taking out 4 different cars, including Pappas, Gidley, Pruitt, and Helio Castroneves. Now, we say taken out. They were off course. Some of them were able to drive back. Others will move to their backup car. There was also an incident down in the second turn where D'Amata and Gugelman got in trouble. Both D'Amato and Gugelman drove back to the pits. And at the same time, most of the crews that were in trouble, as a precaution, if nothing else, went for their backup cars so that they could get back into the field and conclude this race, which the rules do allow. Now, don't forget, we will have coverage next of the Greater Milwaukee Open from Brown Deer Golf Course in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So just down the road, they're playing golf. We're making noise, but for the moment, not quite as loud as we would like to be. We'll be back to get a restart just as soon as they can. Well, there is some work and desperation going on this circuit. This is actually down over the wall on the other side of the gravel pit in turn 1, where Gidley's crew came down to try and salvage parts off of this car to try to get them back to the pit so they can get him restarted, presumably in the backup car. And in the pits itself, as we look down from the Honda Helicam at the pit and paddock area, the good news of Road America is that your transporters are generally physically directly behind your pits. There's a hole in a fence in many places. You can get through to them, get your parts and tools easily. Now let's go to Jan Beekes.
Well, we talked about Mimo Gidley and the car situation. First of all, what happened in the accident, Mimo?
Well, we were going into the corner just fine, and next thing I knew, somebody plowed me from behind. He must have misjudged it big time because they hit me at a high rate of speed and sent me into Pappas, who was next to me. It was just totally uncalled for. I'm not sure who ran into the back of me, but it took us all out.
Now tell me, what is the situation with the backup car?
Well, our backup car is pretty good, so we're just going to switch the seat over, switch a couple parts over, and then I'm going to get in it, and we'll go out there and have some fun.
And hopefully he'll be able to get ready in time. Gary?
Well, let's talk to Michael Andretti. You went over and you were talking to Juan Montoya, and you were joking about the nitrous oxide. Everybody was watching what was happening behind you in the sand. How did he get by you?
Yeah, he just flew by me on the straightaway. I had a good start. I got the jump, and then I guess he got a good toe behind me and went by me on the outside. So can't let that happen this time. Get another shot.
Now you got the single file restart. So how much of an advantage will that be for you as the pole man?
I'll tell you after it happens. Hopefully it is an advantage. We'll see.
Is this disruptive? Does this bother anybody at all? I mean, you guys are pros. You okay?
Same for everybody, but you know, we all want to get this thing done and over with, so hopefully he can get it cleaned up and get going.
Okay, man's won here 3 times. He knows all about what it takes, yeah?
And of course, Helio Castro Neves was right in the middle of that. Helio, what happened down there in turn 1?
Well, unfortunately, I took a chance a lot, and when I brake on a little bit on the grass, and the car was completely like straight ahead to the other guys. I feel sorry, but sometimes you have to take a chance, but I think I did too much.
How is this car? Have you run this car this weekend?
Yeah, we're full.
Yeah, we did only a few laps. We have a brand new rotors, so, well, you're going to start over again. Let's start over again.
Okay, when he's talking about new rotors, that means new brake rotors, so this car may not stop the way he wants to first time around. Rare you hear a driver say it was his fault.
And as you can see by the replay of that video, both Gidley and Pappas were very lucky men. As a result of that incident, the good news is everyone is out. They're back in the pits, and they are, in fact, ready to go. As soon as everyone is topped off on fuel, they will put them in a single file restart here in the dairy country of Wisconsin at Road America.
Well, we all remember all too vividly what happened back at Milwaukee on the Mile Oval about a month ago. Ty Manso, crew member for Michael Andretti, ended up under the left rear wheel in one of the most frightening incidents we've seen on pit road. We are so pleased to see this man back grinning here at a racetrack. I know you're excited to be back at a racetrack. How are you feeling physically? How are you coming along?
I've been telling everybody I'm about 60% right now. It's pretty slow progress, but I can feel an improvement on a week-to-week basis right now.
Getting a little itchy to want to get back in uniform and join your guys on this side of the wall?
Oh, absolutely, but unfortunately they seem to be doing fine without me, so I don't know if it'd be a good idea right now.
Well, rest assured that a lot of people have had you in their thoughts and prayers, and it is genuinely great to see you back. And I couldn't help but notice Rick Rice, our cameraman, pointed out, look at here on the side of his head, shaken, not stirred. I think it really applies in this instance. Great to have you back, Ty.
Thank you.
Oh, that's a perfect cap, and welcome back, Ty. It's good to see you. So it will be a complete restart of rows of 2. Not far away from Elkhart Lake is the lake itself. We'll be right back. Crews are topping off the last of the cars with fuel so they can go with this restart. Michael Andretti's car is now topped off with that methanol fuel. And to review, we still have some time under the red flag. They say about 7 minutes we're going to be going once again. We'll take a look at Cristiano Damata's point of view as he headed through this start and what eventually got him in trouble.
Coming down into turn 1, 6th gear, 200 miles an hour here, Paul. Everyone's slowing down, trying to take care of each other on cold tires and full tanks. The group in front of Cristiano negotiates turn 1 fine. They dive down through 2 into 3. Well, it doesn't look like he got hit there, Paul. You could see that Herta had locked up that inside wheel. But it doesn't appear as though Cristiano got touched coming down into that corner. Let's see if we can see it better on this shot. He's right here, just turned sideways. And he had Mauricio right behind him. We don't know if there was any contact from behind or not.
And, of course, that sent both of them into the gravel pits. Jan Vikas?
Just spoke with Cristiano Damata, and he said simply he got down there, he got on the brakes, the rear brakes locked up, he lost it on his own, said he was not touched by anyone else, said that Mauricio Gugelmin just got out in the gravel trying to avoid Cristiano. Now, he's in the same car. It needed no new parts other than a dust-off, but not the case for his teammate Scott Pruitt. They had to put a new nose assembly on that car, but no other suspension parts. Again, just clean them up, get them ready to go. Both of the Cal-Wells entries ready to rock and roll.
So we count down to what we hope is a start very quickly here. Should be in about 5 minutes. We'll be back after this message and a word from your ABC station. Back at Road America, very shortly here, the engines should be ordered into life once again. In fact, they are just now firing the engines on the pit lane. And we have a red flag here. It's a result of a first lap accident in which Elio Castro-Neves got off on the grass on the right side of the track, collected Mimo Gidley, Max Pappas. Scott Pruitt ran off to avoid the carnage on the track itself. None of those drivers were injured. They either moved back in their primary cars or in their backup cars. While that was happening, you may have noticed that Juan Montoya was able to move out and around the pole sitter Michael Andretti, comparing him to Al Unser Jr., championship year for Al. Well, I'll tell you what, he is certainly closing in on that record after just 9 races in this 1999 season. So when we come back, the field should be ready for a restart. We'll see if Montoya can get the jump again. Back at Road America, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, Paul Page with Parker Johnstone in the CART FedEx Championship Series. They are back rolling. They will move into rows of 2. It will be a total restart of this race with 55 laps of scheduled distance as they have topped off. Now, those cars involved in the accident, Max Pappas, Mimo Gidley, and Elio Castro-Neves in this grid are now in backup cars. Also interesting to note that this is being scored as Adrian Fernandez's 100th start. But if I remember correctly, 3 times this situation has happened in CART. And at the Michigan 500, Adrian Fernandez was similarly involved. So I'll have to check with our statistician, Russ Thompson, and see if they count the half starts or a full start or a no start. So it might be 101, could even be 102. No, it's 100. Jan Vikas.
Well, you're talking about those cars, and of course, Max Pappas did have to go to the spare car, but they say they have run the car. They are happy with it. But remember, almost all the cars that needed work, or certainly those that had to go to the spare car, they had to take a pop-off valve, which is the device that controls the boost on these cars. They had to take it from the primary car or get a new one from CART. If you haven't run it yet, it takes a bit of tuning to get up to maximum boost. Gary?
Just a quick update on Mauricio Gugelmin. We saw the crew busily preparing the backup car and then rolling it to the line. As it turned out, once he was freed from the sand trap, Mauricio drove his primary car back to the pits. They got out the air hoses, the vacuum cleaners. They tidied everything up. He's back out there in the car that he initially started our dress rehearsal in, if you will.
All right, we'll take a look through the onboard cameras for you. There's Michael Andretti, of course. And Parker, while we do that, let me ask you, since Michael Andretti was jumped by this man on the start, now he's telegraphed certainly what he's thinking. Will that happen to Michael again?
Well, as Michael said, the problem was Juan got a great tow from Michael going down this long straightaway that they're on now into turn number 5. How Michael can prevent that from happening, I'm not sure. If they were going back to a single file start, he may have tried to get a jump, but now, side by side, there's no reason at all that Juan Montoya can't use the exact same strategy to pull off the exact same move.
Jimmy Vasser's on board. You also saw that of Robbie Gordon here as Cristiano DeMont is on board. Robbie Gordon over the weekend also gotten a little contact with Montoya going down that long backstretch, actually darted left and right a couple of times, and then finally nudged with the nose of Robbie's car Montoya's left rear tire. And then afterwards, Gordon expressed, I think the polite way to say it would be his displeasure with the conduct of Montoya. So Montoya's got at least a couple of points of conflict within this field. Andretti, who starts alongside him on the pole, and then back in the field, Robbie Gordon.
We've talked about the backup cars. At the conclusion of every session, it's become standard operating procedure for each one of these teams to duplicate the shock settings, the spring settings, ride height swings to that backup car that's back behind the pit lane. Also, the drivers drive both of their cars, the primary and the backup cars, during the course of the weekend to make sure everything is working. And sometimes one of the cars, for no apparent reason, just happens to be a little quicker. You have to remember, everything is hand assembled, and those little tiny variances can make the difference in hundredths of a second, which is all it takes to move up a few places in this competitive grid. But still, for a driver, psychologically, climbing into a car that you didn't practice in this morning's warm-up, you haven't run full tanks in, sometimes can just be a deep psychological disadvantage.
The kart chief steward, Wally Dallenbach, has notified the crews and the field that they will come into their rows of two as they come out from under this bridge, and we will see a restart at the top of the hill this time by. The 14th and final corner on the course, on board with Montoya as he moves into position alongside of Michael Andretti. And then that hill just ahead, they can accelerate at this point. Michael already is and looking for green. Green flag is out. Montoya ducks in again. Christian Fittipaldi slides to the inside, then to the outside, now back to the end. Montoya alongside Michael. Montoya does it again as Montoya takes the lead off of turn one. Then Michael, then his teammate Christian Fittipaldi.
He didn't have to draft that time, Paul. He did the same move that we saw him do to DeFerrin at Portland. He simply got on the brakes later on the outside and passed Michael around the outside of turn one. A very brave move. Very, very, it takes a lot of commitment and a lot of talent to do that on cold tires on full tanks.
Behind Christian Fittipaldi, here comes Jill DeFerrin. Fernandez behind him. Tracy makes a move outside alongside Vasser. Climbing the hill off of Station 5. That, at the bottom of that hill is one of the critical passing areas.
And Paul, for Jimmy Vasser, he's trying something new for the first time. Bigger brake cylinders because he wants more brake pressure. But he says on full tanks, I can barely stop the car.
New crew chief on that car, too. Ricky Davis has been assigned up as the crew chief for Jimmy Vasser.
Those larger master
season around a bit.
And those larger master cylinders, Paul, require a lot more brake effort by the driver. They have to put a lot more leg strength to get the same amount of reaction from the brakes, although it gives you a much more stable brake period over a long period of time. But it can be very fatiguing, especially at a place where you come off 3 very long straightaways into 3 slow corners.
Down the long backstretch, heading for Canada Corner. There it is. DeFerrin works on Christian. Christian Fittipaldi and DeFerrin almost side by side up through Thunder Valley, out from under the bridge. Fittipaldi locks up the right front as he comes into 14. They climb the hill.
And I think the problem that Jill's facing here, Paul, he's the only front runner on Goodyear tires. It takes the Goodyears a couple of more laps than the Firestones to come up to peak operating temperature. So he's fighting a real battle right now, surrounded by Firestone drivers whose tires are already working at optimum performance.
So Franchitti makes his move on Vasser. Both now of the Team Green cars have been able to move on Vasser. DeFerrin continues to work on Fittipaldi. You ride with Jimmy Vasser. That's Franchitti just ahead. Then his teammate Tracy just ahead of him. Down the hill through the woods. Woods helps because there's no aerodynamic side load coming through there. You can't get wind. Heavy braking area. Then they climb the hill again. This section is called Hurry Downs. They all chase Montoya. Heading for the carousel. I'd say, Parker, that's the most critical turn on the course.
It is, Paul. The drivers are pulling nearly 4 Gs through this corner, and if you don't do this corner properly, the rest of the lap is almost unimportant because it leads onto the longest straightaway at Elkhart Lake. This next corner, the kink, is a flat-out fifth gear, 185-mile-an-hour corner. From here, they grab sixth gear, heading down towards Canada at well over 200 miles an hour.
Montoya leads, followed by Andretti. Then DeFerrin's working on Fittipaldi, and the next group, well, look at this. As Herta fights and loses there. Brian Herta with Greg Moore making a move on him. Now Tony Kanaan. And of course that car moving inside of Kanaan, that's Max Pappas. He was one of those involved and is in a backup car. So that'll tell us a little something about how the backup cars work. Franchitti comes alongside and passes Tracy. Franchitti now sets sights on Fernandez.
Franchitti having another disappointing weekend up until the start of the race. Remember, it was at this track that he scored his first victory last year. He should be very, very quick during the course of the race, moving up through this field.
Leaders now through Station 5, climbing the hill up under the Toyota Bridge again.
And you can see in just a few corners how much distance Franchitti's pulled on his teammate, Paul Tracy.
Franchitti came up over the top of the hill, right on top of Adrian Fernandez. Now the left-hander that turns them down toward the carousel again. See if he can catch him by the kink or Canada corner.
And there are some different strategies playing out here, Paul. Some of the drivers have really trimmed their cars out to go for maximum speed down these long straightaways, but they sacrifice these medium and higher speed corners, not producing as much downforce. The other drivers, well, they're doing exactly the opposite, so we'll see this interval shrink and grow depending on the aerodynamic download that these different drivers and engineers have chosen to run.
Now under braking at Canada corner, that right-hander, Franchitti, was not able to catch up properly to Fernandez, at least close enough to be able to get inside him and try to outbrake him going into Canada corner. So it is Montoya, followed by Michael Andretti. Christian Fittipaldi is third, DeFerrin fourth. Fernandez remains in fifth, followed by Dario Franchitti. Now, nothing has changed while we've been away. Positions all remain as they were. Pappas from the start, remember, using his backup car, started 14th and now is in 11th place. And this is the 8th race in a row that Montoya has led.
Right now, Paul, the two fastest cars on the track are Juan Montoya. He's one of only two cars in the 1-minute 43-second bracket, followed by Adrian Fernandez with the pressure from Dario Franchitti. Everybody else is back in the 144-second or 145-second range.
Mimo Gidley has pulled off the side of the course down between 2 and 3. Drivers agree that if you're off course, they're not going to make any heroic efforts to try to get you back into the race. So Gidley, again a backup car, part of that first lap involvement, has a problem. Watching the players' cars now, report from the course is that one, if not both of them, had strange-sounding engines. Jan Beekes?
Yes, I spoke with Paul Ray, who runs the Mercedes program in the kart series, and said simply that both Moore and Carpentier were getting into the revometer, so they have no problems with their engines. But that is not the case for Mimo Gidley. It was an engine to put him out.
Well, if you're one of the corner workers working right at the edge of the racetrack, as the volunteer workers are here, I imagine if you're getting into the rev limiter and that car goes ripping past you, it doesn't sound good at all. Gidley out, now becomes a spectator, checks his helmet. Montoya still leads. Then Andretti, then Fittipaldi. Montoya has pulled out a 5-second lead on the field. Here he comes, and 5 seconds behind, cresting that hill, is Michael Andretti.
And with that last lap, Paul, he just went a half a second quicker, faster than anybody else has gone to this point in the race so far. So he is doing exactly what we've seen now at street courses, at Cleveland. We've seen it on the ovals. He's now at full power, just like the rest of the field. Fuel strategy has nothing to do with today's race. He's just blindingly fast in all conditions. And he's one of only a couple of drivers that this is their first time racing at Road America.
Coming to Station 5, we're going to ride with Michael.
This is the slowest corner on the racetrack, Paul, 60 miles an hour.
course, so now he joins Gidley. Helio Castroneves passed Michel Jourdain Jr. and now sits in 7th place. Castroneves also in a backup car. There's the leader, Juan Montoya, and how did he grab the lead? Well, he did it 2 times on the start, but with 2 different techniques. This was on the restart.
Oh, wow. You got a good toe off of Michael coming down the pit straightaway. Michael started to come back on the racing line, and Montoya just barged his way through. Very reminiscent of Motegi, eh, Paul?
Exactly. Michael moving to the left, and Montoya using a little bit of grass as well. Moreno. This battle back in the field with Carpentier right behind him. Remember, in his primary car, Carpentier went flipping off of turn 1 in the Friday practice. Cristiano D'Amata just ahead of Moreno. And Helio Castroneves sits right behind Carpentier. Here's a little interesting side note. In the pits, as we watch this, Al Unser Jr. came in on 7 laps, and they topped off his fuel.
Well, that's the beginning of the pit window, Paul. If they can go from this point forward, that means that if they hit the yellows right, he won't have to stop when everybody else is coming in on lap 45 to try to go to the end. They have nothing to lose at the back. It'll be interesting to see if they can play the yellows just right, because now fuel strategy isn't as important. It's just making sure you're in and out of the pits at the right time, gaining track position.
Well, veteran winning team, Al Unser Jr. actually ties the record for the most kart starts at 264. That ties him with Bobby Rahal. So the strategy plays in the Penske pit, a team that is very good at that. Battle comes up the hill as we're going to take you forward. DeFerrin now battling with Fernandez. And there they are. DeFerrin, the blue and white car in front. Red and green is Fernandez. Jan Beekes.
The initial report from the crew in regards to Scott Pruitt is that he lost an engine. Remember, the long straightaways, this place can be really hard on him.
Yeah, in fact, Parker, we were wondering about that, whether or not engines might be part of the problem during this run. Oh, look at him jump off and on the course.
Well, with these long straightaways, Paul, and these engines are now pulling in the mid-15,000 plus range, it really puts a toll on engines. And I think we've seen more engines let go this weekend than we have at any other race during the course of the year. We've lost a few on Friday. We lost some yesterday, and now again during the race.
Franchitti must have had some sort of excursion. Put him back in the position he sits in now. We'll check on him. Here is Fernandez. We're going to take you up to Juan Montoya up at the front of the field.
Coming down the long pit straight, Paul, they'll reach just over 200 miles an hour coming down into the first corner. Hard on the brakes, down 2 gears into 4th through turn 1. Right up on the rumple strips of both the inside and the outside. Coming down to turn number 3, they're on the brakes, down to 3rd gear. They go through this corner at about 90 miles an hour. And now onto one of 3 long straightaways. You'll see him grab 4th gear, 5th gear, then 6th gear. Once again, just over 200 miles an hour, then hard at the brakes, almost 3 G's of braking force, coming down to the slowest corner on the racetrack, turn number 5. 2nd gear corner, 60 miles an hour. He'll upshift to 3rd. This next corner, turn number 6, is difficult because when the drivers have to turn for the corner, it's blind through here and falls off a little off camber. Very fast right-hander. You really have to hold on here. Not much room for runoff. Then it's hard on the brakes, sweeping downhill here, coming through turn number 8 at about 70 miles an hour.
Over on the pit road, Carpentier headed for the pit road. Completion of lap number 9. But as he came into the pits, take a look at this. It's like he's already touched 2 different places on the inside. Whoa! Oh, boy. That was close.
There there was some real miscommunication between those two drivers as far as who was going where, Paul.
Back with Montoya at the front. Andretti 6, almost 7 seconds back.
Once again, Montoya, Paul, now 0.4 of a second quicker than anyone else on the track. Actually made that 0.6 on that last lap. Now in the low 1 minute, 42-second bracket range. He's pulled out a 7-second interval on Michael Andretti.
Completion of the 10th lap. Michael Andretti with Fittipaldi, his teammate, closing on him. Then a close interval between DeFerrin and Fernandez as DeFerrin closes. Jan Bikas.
Well, you saw Patrick Carpentier get in trouble out on the racetrack and then duck onto pit road. He had flat spotted the tires. He wanted 4 new tires, but he also said the car was very loose. So they filled it up with fuel, put tires, and then took some front wing out of the car. So hopefully he'll have a better balance now. And anybody who pitted after lap 5 or 6, which would be the 2 cars we've seen, they are within the pit window for a 3-stop race.
Well, we mentioned DeFerrin and Fernandez. There they are. As Fernandez continues that pursuit, and that battle comes a little bit closer to Christian Fittipaldi, currently in 3rd place. Indications are now from the pits, too, that very shortly Montoya may head for the pits as well. Remember, at 4 miles in length, this is a track at which you can make no mistakes on the fuel, so the best rule here, I would think, would be to play it conservative, because if you run out just after the starting line, you're going to have to figure out how to have the car roll for a full 3.5 miles. Now they've changed their mind, apparently. Montoya is not going to come in shortly.
We're also getting reports of several of the drivers' cars going loose besides Carpentier's. The other thing that we're getting reports of is drivers having problems with the rear brakes, and we've seen several incidents, including Carpentier's, that had begun because of rear brake lockup. So the drivers can adjust that to the front, but at some point you just run out of adjustment, you overheat the brakes, and you really have problems going into these fast corners like this, turn 1 coming in off the end of the straightaway.
Gil DeFerrin currently 4th. Take a look at his record this season. He is really looking good. Moved into 2nd place in the points with a 2nd place finish 2 weeks ago at Cleveland. Interestingly enough, though, his primary sponsor, Havoline, has announced that they're going to discontinue their sponsorships in motorsports overall. So here's a guy, 2nd place in the points, facing next season along with the Walker team without a primary sponsor. I'm sure that will change. Cristiano D'Amata into the pits. D'Amata was in 16th. Remember, he too was part of the off-course excursion, only this time down between 2 and 3, and stayed in his primary car. So Cristiano D'Amata on lap 11 comes out of the pits, refreshed with fuel and tires, and we expect the leaders to come in shortly. We'll be right back to watch that. Richie Hearn has just come into the pits. We expect DeFerrin in any time now, and the leaders shortly thereafter. DeFerrin currently sits in 4th place. Other than Richie Hearn coming into the pits while we were away, no changes on the race course. Problem with his air jacks.
Well, this team's had problems all weekend, Paul. They rode a car off at Cleveland at our last race. They've gotten another one at Mid-Ohio during testing. They had another tub written off just this weekend. And they've had problems with this car all day long in the morning warm-up, and now once again it looks like they've got problems during the race.
Just ahead of Hearn, you got a glimpse of a car pulling away, and that was Luis Garcia Jr. as he headed back into traffic after service. DeFerrin, at the last minute, makes the turn over onto the pit road, a chicane to try and help get them slowed down at the top of the hill, delineated by those cones. And then down on the limiter, and Gil DeFerrin comes off the course for his first stop. Gary?
Gil DeFerrin is the last pit on pit road. Right behind him is Montoya. Montoya's crew went over the wall. They've gotten back, opened up the lane. Here comes Gil. Terry Walker's team. They go to work for the first time today. Listen to those revs up.
Get ready. Just good.
Check it out. Franchitti with Jan.
Waiting on the fuel. Waiting on the fuel. Okay, go, 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 go.
Tracy made a stop in 12.84 seconds. Everything clean and no changes on the car.
Jimmy Vasser also in. Castroneves in. Castroneves has been nipping away, moving forward. Robbie Gordon comes in for his stop as well. Rosales in for service. Michel Jourdain Jr. And we expect Montoya in this car, Dario Franchitti, to report an off-course excursion, as the same is true. Well, in the case of Garcia, it looks like he's driven off and trying to get to the safety of a corner station. Dario Franchitti, here's what happened to him.
There's Fernandez, and there's Franchitti right in behind him. Coming off of turn 8, Paul, stayed on the gas to try to keep it on the racetrack, got into the grace and back in.
Montoya now on the pit road and heads down for some service from the Target Chip Ganassi team. Gary?
Rob Hill waving him into position out on the outer edge of the pit road. We watch now, see the nose of the car coming toward us. We'll see how the rookie handles this and how his team performs.
Okay, reset the fuel.
4 victories this year, opening up the huge championship points lead. You see the time as they work. Whoa, that is quick thus far. Tires already changed. Feeling done and rolling. 11.9 seconds. Nice service from the Ganassi team.
15th lap, Michael Andretti is also in. Dario Franchitti is in, so is Fernandez.
And Adrian Fernandez pulled it off in 12.48 seconds. Again, no changes.
Michael Andretti out in front of Fernandez. Hurt is in, Pappas, Kanan, Guzman have all made stops on this cycle and on the 15th lap. P.J. Jones also making a stop on this cycle. Because of the great distance of this course, well, generally everybody stops within the same lap. Certainly trying not to spread them out by more than 2, but we're seeing some strategies at play with early stops, beginning with Michael Andretti. Current leader is Christian Fittipaldi. There he is, but of course he assumes the lead with the stops and is due in on this lap.
And even though we talked about fuel mileage not being important at the beginning of this race, it is significant that Christian Fittipaldi's been able to stretch this 2 additional laps from our early leaders coming into the pits. If he picks up a yellow in just the right place, this could play a significant role in the outcome of this race. Keep in mind, he's going just as quickly as everyone else, but getting much better mileage doing it.
Now Christian
What's
again.
your speed? There's an open pit. You have an open pit behind you. 4 tires filled with fuel. Hit the marks. No changes.
Gary Gerald.
You heard John Cesanicus up on the pit wall advising Christian that there is an open pit. Now he glides in for his service.
Reset your fuel meter. Reset your fuel meter.
We listen and watch.
Watch Kevin, watch Kevin. Hold it, go, go, go.
Minute 12.5 seconds, Christian on the road. Let's go
So
to Jan.
Christian Fittipaldi back in. Jan Bigastario is into. Oh, wait a minute. Jimmy Vasser. Quick spin off the course. Now, where he is in the gravel pit, the question is it likely that he can get back going? And I doubt it.
I don't think so, Paul. We've seen even the safety trucks get stuck trying to rescue cars out here. It doesn't look like he's spun the rear tires, which is good, but I doubt he can get out of this on his own.
Now, what have the officials said with regard to getting a car like Vasser's out of there?
They said that unless it poses a significant danger to the other cars, they're going to keep it a local yellow and try to get it out without going to a full course yellow. You can see he's going down the inside of Brian Herba. Gets the inside tires locked, but significantly the right rear, and that's all it takes. It's like someone pulling the e-brake at 120 miles an hour, and that's what spun him around.
So Jimmy Vasser is at least going to look around, see if he can get some help, but I doubt that any will be coming based on the way they're going to approach this run. Michael Andretti up behind Christian Fittipaldi. And Jan Bigas, you have a further update from the pits.
Yes, it was on Dario Franchitti. We saw him spin, then come on pit road and get fresh tires. Even though he spun, he did not say to the crew he wanted any changes, so they merely just filled it up with fuel, gave a new set of tires, and off he went. I don't know if there's been a race I've seen so many cars pitting with no changes, even though we see the guys slipping and sliding as they are.
So now everyone has made their stops. 16 laps are complete. Most of the stops came on the 15th or 16th lap, which is what you would normally predict here.
You would think so. That's why I was so surprised with people coming in on 13, lap 14, because that means they're getting less than 1.8, 1.7 miles per gallon.
Michael Andretti moving to the outside, trying to come around his teammate, Christian Fittipaldi. And in turn 1, he does so, though heavy braking to do it. I want to take you back now to Jimmy Vasser and his onboard camera when he got in trouble just a lap ago.
This is going through the 185-mile-an-hour right-hand kink up in top gear. He's got a good run on Brian Herta, who is slower going through the kink. Oh, he just got him locked up, Paul. He didn't even bother to try to downshift there. He knew he was in trouble. Brian really paying some heads-up driving there. Let Jimmy slide through the inside before turning in on the corner. Otherwise, it would have taken him out as well.
Now, a yellow flag flies only in that area of the race course. And they will not go full course. What we'll have to watch for, and we assume, is that Gale Crane is going to end up dropping Jimmy's car behind the wall. Gary, what's the story?
Well, we were just watching with the crew down here, and of course all these teams now with monitors, and once they saw where he was in the sand trap, they immediately started pulling their helmets off, shaking their heads, knowing that another tough luck day is over. And poor Jimmy Vasser, what a season it's been. And I think the picture right there of him up against that, what looks like a tree trunk or something sitting along the wall, sums up the way this thing has gone at the midpoint of 1999.
And Carpentier slows. He's in trouble. It appears that the engine is still running, but not running well.
Yeah, 10-4, 10-4.
Coming down the straightaway, Paul, he can take the runoff and go straight ahead if he can get to it. He may not be able to here, though. It is downhill. He should have enough speed. Yep, and he just goes straight off the runoff area.
Now, the rule here with this course, that's a short little strip, as you can see, between turn 5 and the approach over to 14, is they can pick him up and bring him up the hill if he stops in the middle of that. And that won't count as an off course in any way. Christian Fittipaldi, Adrian just behind him. Best battle on the course, and it's for third. Adrian going for third. Whoa! So close, they almost touch. Adrian makes the pass. Climb the hill out of station 5.
Christian knew he was there, Paul. He just didn't want to give it up. He made him work for it, and Adrian was already committed. That was some real good driving between those two drivers there.
Jan Beek sprinted down to the Forsyth pit to find out exactly what the story is on Carpentier.
Yes, and it's electrical. They said that the engine was cutting in and out, and when it cut out, it was nothing home, and unfortunately, he's dead stick, and he's out.
So Carpentier's day is done. Elio Castroneves up behind Mauricio Guzman. The battle here is for 14. Remember, Castroneves in a backup car. Both of these cars were involved in the aborted start incident, so in two separate corners, Elio Castroneves started the first incident, and then as they came down the hill, Cristiano D'Amata collected Mauricio Guzman and sent him off. Castroneves had to go to the backup car. Guzman was able to drive his primary back to the pits and restart.
And Paul, there were lots of questions about this Lola chassis here at Elkhart Lake. It's the downforce that it produces versus the drag that also goes along with that downforce. And a lot of people wonder if it would be fast enough down these long straightaways. Castroneves practiced well all weekend. Unfortunately, the last qualifying session didn't go well. He had to start a little farther back than they had hoped, but it answered some of those questions. Obviously, Al Unser Jr.'s team, Penske, had ordered a new Lola chassis, but they have been mixing and matching Penske and Lola parts, making very small changes, trying to find the best combination.
Castroneves on the main stretch. Moves to the inside.
And I think that answers the straightaway speed question,
Paul. Answers it quickly. So Mauricio Guzman has to give up position to Castroneves. Also got a glimpse of what looked like Cristiano D'Amata's car heading for the pits as we watch them come down the pit straight. So it's still Montoya in front, chased by Michael and Adrian Fernandez. We'll be back. Back at Road America, no change in the situation. In 1 week, these cars head north to Toronto, Ontario, Canada. Exhibition place for the Toronto Indy. Can Juan Montoya win here, then win there? Can he continue winning this season? What will happen with the championship fight? The coverage on ABC Sports. Well, now, as we think a little bit about Montoya, you were talking about fuel, what they're getting, where they're going.
Yeah, I didn't get to finish that thought, Paul, but we just heard over the scanner that they've told Montoya to short shift and actually to lean out the mixture 1 click. The problem is not how much power the guys can use on the track, but back in the tanks, they have to get 1.85 miles per gallon because that's the total allotment for the 225 miles these guys are driving, or 220 miles these guys are driving around Elkhart Lake, so that at some point they do have to be a little careful. And according to my fuel chart, some of these guys are getting a little less than 1.8 miles per gallon, which means they'll just flat run out of fuel.
Al Unser Jr., he last stopped on the 7th lap. This is the 21st. So they are on a Penske strategy. Routine stop for little Al, though he's not really been a contender in this fight at all. The lead is still Montoya, then Andretti, then Fernandez. Roberto Moreno was able to get around Max Pappas for 10th. And Scott Pruitt is a spectator. Right, Jan Bikas?
Yes, unfortunately he is. I understand it was engine that put you out, but tell us about that first turn. What happened to you out there?
Well, we were all going down in there, and I was up on the outside, and I think PJ had swerved to miss cars, because all of a sudden there was dust and dirt and cars sliding, and I was on the outside of him, and he bumped me off, so I went straight off. And it was just real wild, but it's just unfortunate that the day has to end for us this way with looks like another engine problem, and it's bad for the team and for Pioneer, but we'll be back at Toronto, hoping to turn things around.
And unfortunately, right next to you, Cristiano D'Amata has just come in as well. What put you out, Cristiano?
I had gearbox problems since the 3rd lap, going downshifting to 5th. I was getting into Mercury, and that was getting worse and worse. Afterwards, I started to have this problem in 3rd and other gears, so I had to stop because there wasn't a way to drive. Going into neutral.
Oh, excuse me, but Adrian Fernandez was trying to get around Michael Andretti for 2nd. Coming down into Station 5, under braking, he nudged Andretti, spun Fernandez off.
We saw how aggressive he was before with Christian Fittipaldi, but this time, Paul, he didn't leave an opening on the inside or the outside. It was only Michael Andretti, and he put himself in an impossible situation and tried to use Michael as a brake. Fortunately, Michael was able to continue. You can see he's looking towards the inside, goes back for the racing line. He's in way too fast and way too deep, lifts up the back of Michael's car. Michael drives towards the outside, regains control, keeps the car headed in the right direction up the hill. Adrian fortunately got the clutch in and was able to continue.
But what that did is put Adrian Fernandez under very close attack from Gilles de Ferran. They come down on the backside of the course, and de Ferran's right there. Boy, did you see how fast the hands were in Andretti's cockpit when that happened, though? Back and forth, saved the car.
If he would have continued to turn in for the apex, Paul would have turned him straight around. But as you know, having raced Formula Fords here during the June sprints, if someone gets in behind you, you got to keep the thing under control first and then worry about direction later. And that's exactly what he did.
Two teammates still in a fight, Tracy, then Franchitti.
And remember, Franchitti had that earlier off, so he's trying to regain lost ground now. And I've said it before, Franchitti is one of the best at going the fastest. If they're starting to think about fuel concerns, he should be able to get around Paul in the next few laps because he's got that draft. It's going to help him conserve fuel, and Paul will help pull Dario down these long straightaways.
One great thing about Road America is you can wander around, climb up in a grandstand about any one of the corners. This is Station 5, one of the more popular. The crowd just picnicked out on the lawn on the left and right. Brian Herta was coming up the pit road, suddenly slowed. He definitely has a problem. No idea what it would be. It, of course, should not be fuel. He's been on his routine stop. This is going into Station 5. Michael Andretti with Fernandez just behind him. Talk about fast hands. Michael unfazed climbs the hill.
What's interesting there, Paul, is you can see from his left thumb, he's on the radio button. I'd be very interested to hear what he was saying to Ed Nethman just at that moment. Although I'm afraid the FCC probably wouldn't approve of it.
Well, Adrian Fernandez got into the back end with the nose. Jan Bikas, any damage to that car?
Well, no, the team thinks that the car may have remained unscathed. At least that's what they're saying so far. And then, Parker, you're wondering what Michael said on the radio. I can tell you what happened on the radio for Adrian Fernandez. He said absolutely nothing. Gary?
Well, and from the Michael Andretti camp, a quick check with them, and they said everything appears to be all right. They think no problem for their driver after a very frightening close call for both men at high speed.
You ride with Michael Andretti. He is second. He is 11 seconds, almost 12 seconds behind the leader of the race, that fabulous rookie, Juan Montoya.
Okay, Paul, we didn't get to finish this earlier because of the action on the track, but we'll see if we can take you around the back half of Elkhart Lake. He's now going over the top of this very difficult turn 6 complex. This is a very quick right-hand corner that then leads down to 170-mile-an-hour hard braking area. The most crucial corner at Elkhart Lake coming up. The carousel, the drivers are at 4 Gs here. If they weigh 170 pounds with suit and helmet, they're experiencing almost 700 pounds of force coming through this long sweeping corner. He grabs top gear through the kink now on the back side of the track. And now, well over 200 miles an hour as he comes down into Canada Corner. Stands on the brakes, comes down through the gears. Right up on the inside of the curving. Very difficult corner to negotiate up under this bridge. The exit is blind. Stands on the brakes, comes down a gear for the remaining corner, turn 14, and that brings you back up onto the pit straight. They may be working on fuel, but you can see he's driving absolutely as hard as he can through these corners.
Well, if you were able to join us on our ESPN2 coverage of CART today earlier, you would know that we updated this story here. Roberto Moreno, who's been steadily moving up, sits in 9th. He is in for Mark Blundell. Now, originally, Mark Blundell indicated that he would like to be back in the cockpit by Elkhart Lake, but then he took a private test at Putnam Raceway earlier in the week in Indiana. Didn't feel comfortable with that, talked it over with the doctors again, and decided as a result that he would not run. And he had to go out and search for Roberto Moreno on Friday morning. Gary Gerald?
And a further update on his Pac West teammate, Mauricio Guzman. We chronicled earlier just what a wild and wacky weekend had been for Big Mo. We understand that he's have a radio report that he's had some problems shifting, and he's wondering if it might be little particles of sand and gravel that maybe they weren't able to clean out after that early red flag. So the adventure continues for Guzman in car 17.
And you saw, too, that Brian Herta headed into the pits. He's now back on the course. What's the story there, Jan?
Well, let's check with the team owner, Bobby Rahal. What happened to Brian?
Well, it's just done it again, apparently. It just quit on him. It sounds like we have an electrical problem in the ignition. Just quit. And he tried to cycle it, and usually that works to restart him, and it didn't. And came in here, restarted, went out, and it's just quit again, I hear. So, bugs.
How tough is it for you today? I know this is one of your favorite racetracks not to be driving.
Well, I wish I could, if I could drive one circuit every day, it would be this one.
Thanks, Bobby.
Okay.
Brian Herta moves over, lets the leader, Juan Montoya, pass. They're now displaying at the starter's stand at the start-finish line the course condition flag, which can mean anything from rain to oil to even gravel on the race course.
And what we saw, Paul, there was
whoa. Adrian Fernandez came up trying to get around DeFerrin, and that was a big touch.
And the piece that you saw go up there is there was a brake duct that's been reported that's come off one of the Team Green cars, Paul. That's what the debris flag's being displayed for at start-finish. We saw Montoya and Herta split it. Unfortunately, he ran right over the top of it.
Juan Montoya just spun off and on the course. So all of a sudden things tighten up. The debris that you saw with Fernandez and DeFerrin was that brake duct. But remember, that's carbon fiber, and what that can do to your tires. Here is Montoya down at the bottom of the hill, again at Station 5. Didn't lose the lead in doing that. Here's the way it looked from his seat.
Hard on the brakes from 6th all the way down to 2nd. We've got the rears locked up, Paul, but this is one of the quickest recoveries I think I've ever seen. He didn't lose much time at all in that.
Well, as he came across the line, he had 11.5 seconds on second place Michael Andretti. So he had a little time to play with, but he didn't use much of it. And now they pulled the course condition flag, so apparently when we saw that duct get hit, it pulverized it, and maybe they were able to get whatever pieces were left off on the grass on the left side of the track.
And scanning the onboard communications, we're starting to get more and more complaints from the drivers about braking problems, Paul. We knew that engines would be a problem, maybe gearboxes, because they're shifting upwards of 40 times a lap, but now brakes are starting to enter into the picture.
Helio Castro now is steadily moving up, is 12th. Andretti, with that spin as they came across the line, was now 6 seconds behind Montoya, Gary.
Well, there is concern concern for Juan Montoya from Chip Ganassi and his entourage down here. They suspected for a moment just prior to that spin that maybe he had lost second gear. They say, however, it seems to be on and off, like maybe it's a gear linkage problem. Whether or not that had anything to do with the spin, I don't have a clue. But they are concerned about that as the kid continues to set the pace despite the spin.
Paul, what I just noticed on the onboard going down in that same corner, turn number 5 where Juan had spun before, is that he downshifted to third and second much later in the corner. In fact, he was right on top of the apex. So if he thought he was having a gear problem, normally you'd have all your shifting done in a straight line before you ever turned into the corner. He is now favoring the gearbox shifting very late, so that in case he does have a problem, it's less likely to snap the back of the car around on him.
On the lap that he spun, Montoya only lost 4.6 seconds to Michael Andretti. Andretti is second, Fittipaldi is third, then de Ferran. Now, you know, because he is a rookie, Montoya has to keep the red visibility light at the back of his car turned on. First-year driver has to do that, but can you imagine how it must feel to be all these other guys throughout the year looking at that rookie light?
It's kind of amusing, isn't it? After someone's done so well, won so many races, to still have the rookie light on. But Montoya has never gone a race distance at Elkhart Lake. You have to have a lot of patience. It's one of those tracks that a lot of things can happen over a very short period of time. Sometimes it gets a little monotonous. It's lap after lap, and then all of a sudden, positions can change very quickly.
Christian Fittipaldi puts Al Unser Jr. a lap down. Richie Hearn should be in any time now, and in the next couple of laps, we expect stops by all of the leaders. But Juan Montoya, despite the spin, continues his lead. Michael's 7 seconds back. Back at Road America, Jill de Ferran came in for a routine stop on the 28th lap. Michael Andretti been nibbling away at Montoya, but of course, as Parker Johnstone mentioned to you, Montoya appears to be having some problem, either linkage or gearbox itself, and I think now you're suspecting the gearbox more than the linkage.
Well, from the onboards we've been watching, Paul, he's shifting very late. In fact, he's getting his shifting done almost as he comes off the corner. He doesn't want to take a chance, I think, disturbing or taking a risk of breaking the gearbox, or if it does have a small hiccup, causing another snap spin like we saw in turn 5.
Dario Franchitti just reported on pit road. Montoya is due in this lap as well. Max Pappa's crew is laid out, waiting his arrival. So is Robbie Gordon's. This is the 30th lap.
You can see it there, Paul. He's shifting extremely late. And you can hear it with the revs on the downshift, Paul. I think he's having some gearbox problems there. It's not the usual crisp sound, the quick action of the hand. He's really taking his time.
They've told him, Parker, to nurse it. They keep telling him on the radio he's okay, to tell him to nurse it, and they're laid out on pit road expecting him in. I think it might be very interesting to see how he's able to exit after the pit stop, if in fact he's got a problem with that gearbox.
And the problem is shifting becomes such a subconscious motion that if you start really putting a lot of focus in it, you can actually do more damage to the gearbox because you're not doing what you would naturally do. It gets your rhythm off, your concentration falls off.
You heard Chip Ganassi.
He's had another problem, Paul. He locked the rear wheels there just as he went for the last gear.
Go +3 on fuel and pit. Go +3.
I say Chip Ganassi has been coaching him all the way around, giving him the technical of what he needs to know just ahead.
Okay, nice and easy now. Nothing fancy. Nice and easy.
Through the chicane at the top of the pits, Michael Andretti also in. Gary Gerald awaits.
Right behind Chip Ganassi, who has moved out of the scoring stand onto the wall. We got a low-level look from pit exit as
That's Michael's guy there.
Montoya. Rob Hill on the left front.
Okay, reset the fuel.
Here they go to work.
Turn off the speed control. Take it easy going out of the pit.
One of the cockpit.
Ready? Go, go, go.
Well, fine. Now here's the moment of truth. Look pretty good on acceleration out of here.
Roberto Moreno pulled off the edge of the course as Montoya came out. Fernandez just killed it on his pit stop, Jan.
Yes, he did. Unfortunately, unfortunately, that turned it into a 25-second pit stop. They had a nice fast one. They put one turn of front wing, and then unfortunately he killed it.
So Fernandez comes back out. Christian Fittipaldi takes over the lead of the race. Montoya has to nurse it out, but he did beat Michael Andretti out of the pits. Remember that Christian took it a lap further on the first set of stops. We're now on the 31st lap.
And Paul, I think as we saw Moreno pull off, we saw smoke coming out of the engine cowling. This track is really beating up the equipment this weekend. Montoya over the scanner, we're continuing to hear him complain of gearbox problems as he does the outlap after that last pit stop.
Pit.
I'm still concerned, Paul. DeFerrin came in on lap 28, which means that he's getting less than 1.8 miles per gallon. Christian's in good shape, Montoya's in good shape, Michael's in good shape. But at the very least, I don't think they'll have enough fuel in the fuel tank.
4 tires and fuel. Watch your speed, Christian. Watch your speed. Hit the marks. You got a clean pit lane in and out. The only guy on pit lane. Good stop, guys. Reset your fuel meter, Christian. Reset your meter.
Once again on the radio, listening to the commands for the automatic to reset. Tire change complete, down off the jacks.
Go.
Everything in the routine, nicely executed.
Nice to hear the cheerleading for the crew who are all on the radio as they come in. Montoya, you saw, got around, picks up the lead on Fittipaldi.
One thing that I think has become very obvious during these stops now.
Dan Gurney Siegel with Walter Salas in the cockpit. Looks like another engine out of the Toyota stable gone.
It's just going to roll it off the end of turn 5 here, Paul.
Well, now we've talked about Montoya, and the suggestion certainly was that Montoya is okay on fuel, but Gary, is he okay on gearbox?
That's what we want to try to find out. Chip Ganassi watching and monitoring contact with his driver. What is the gearbox situation, Chip, for Juan?
Well, Gary, apparently he gets all the gears when he wants them sometimes, but sometimes he doesn't. So it's some sort of linkage problem, we're thinking. And apparently he can drive with it. He's done plenty of laps quicker than Michael, even though he's had that problem. So I'm just telling him to baby it right now, bring it home.
Now, in this nursing it situation, what is your primary concern? Is this intermittent that you have no control over, or is there something he can do as a driver?
My primary concern is getting to the end of the race.
Yeah, indeed. Well, he's been able to do it all season long with a lot of flair. Let's see what he can do now with an ailing gearbox.
Well, at least Chip Ganassi has his focus right. Richie Hearn off the final corner up the hill. Greg Moore makes his appearance on the pit road, and
One on fuel.
This is the last of the cars to pit.
Right under Squeak's hand. Reset your meter.
As I was saying before, as we watch Christian leave, I think you can see how much more deliberate the crews and the drivers are. They're being much more careful after the accidents that we've had in the pits this year. You can see there's an actual pause before the driver launches now to make sure that everyone's clear, all the equipment's clear. And it's good to see that all teams are respecting the problems that we've had in the past equally and taking that little bit of extra time, even though it may cost them on the racetrack.
The two Newman Haas cars together on the circuit, second and third place. Montoya the leader. Greg Moore the last of the cars to stop, and 33 laps of the 55 are now complete. So it's Montoya, Fittipaldi, Andretti, Dario Franchitti is fourth, and Gilles DeFerrin is now fifth. 55 laps, 5 more than last year. It could make a world of difference in the outcome. Back at Road America, Elkhart Lake, Wisconsin, you look down from the Honda Helican. Dario Franchitti suddenly had what sounded like a very rough-running engine and came up the pit road and is now pulled into his pits. Montoya is still the leader of the race here. There is Franchitti. And without much energy from the crew, you would suspect his day is done, Jan.
Well, the interesting thing is the engine is still running, so it's not like it blew up or anything. They're looking to see maybe where that smoke is coming from. They do know it's engine related. While they check on that, we'll go to Gary Gerald.
We've got Jimmy Vasser, who's made his way back to the compound here. Jimmy, the situation with Brian Herta, tell us what happened there.
There's nothing really with Brian. I was having problems with my braking and locking up the rears. I flat spotted some rear tires in the first run, and I was dialing front bias into it. We're running these bigger master cylinders this weekend. I think in race conditions it turned out to be a bad idea. Just went in there and locked up the rears. Just nothing really I could do. For some reason, it has an adverse effect on the rear braking, and it's unfortunate, but we're here pulling for one. Then to have another great race.
It's got to be tough for you because it seems like there's just a little black cloud chasing you all of a sudden in 1999.
Yeah, well, 99's not over yet. So we got a great group of target guys over here, and it's only halftime. So we had a good qualify this weekend. Unfortunately, it was a bad race. We couldn't put it together again, but I'm confident in myself and in my team that we'll be back. We'll be back on track, back in the winner's circle.
See you next week in Toronto. Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Jan?
And Gary, Dario Franchitti has climbed from the car. The crew say that something must have been sucked up in the turbocharger, that the turbo is seized, so the engine's running, but the turbo is not spinning.
Oh, tough luck for Dario Franchitti, who was running fourth at the time. That brought DeFerrin up to fourth. Montoya is still having uncharacteristic trouble at almost every corner.
We saw him even struggling to get by Richie Hearn there a few moments ago coming down the pit straightaway. Finally got it done under braking, but he lost 2 seconds that lap to Christian Fittipaldi and Michael Andretti.
Race recap at 35 laps. Remember the false start that they had here and the incident involving 6 cars and 2 turns did not count. It was a complete restart of the race. But Montoya now has both Fittipaldi and Andretti just 3 seconds back from him. There comes Fittipaldi. Michael now moves out to come around Richie Hearn. Roberto Moreno, see his car over there by the side of the track. He's made it back to the pits, and Gary.
The super sub is back here. Roberto, what was the problem?
Today, basically, we had a bit of an electrical problem that put us out of the race. But the Motor Pack West car did really well because we had a tough time this time coming from 16th and making our way up to 9th. And I was looking good. I was even catching Greg Moore, who's now running 7th. Unfortunately, something has gone wrong with the electrics. We have to check out what it is.
We'll see you in 2 more events now, substituting for Mark.
Yes, indeed. Marco is only going to come back after Michigan, so the team has asked me to stay in for a couple more events, and I'm very, very glad again choose to do the job. And the guys did a great job today. I came in behind Canada and in the pits, came out in front of him big time, so we did a good job today anyhow.
Thanks, Roberto. Let's get back to Jan with Dario, I believe.
Yes, and Dario, we have documented that it was the turbo, but how was the car prior to that? You had some great lap times going there, at least for a while.
Car was fantastic. There's only so much my guys and I can do to make it happen. If things keep breaking on the car, we're never going to get anywhere. It's the second problem I've had. My guys are working so hard and things out of their control keep breaking. So we're very disappointed.
How hard is that for your confidence? Because it's also hard for you to stay confident if you have mechanical problems.
My confidence is fine. I know that we have the fastest car out there today, and I was a bit, the day started going wrong when they red flagged the race for no apparent reason. Started going downhill from there.
Oh, so Dario is critical of the red flag, and I guess there is an argument. If they said if the guys ran off, that was going to be their problem. Why, in fact, I guess his question is, they were off, we should have, in fact, continued on. By the way, for Roberto Moreno, that's the first race since he started subbing for Mark Blundell that he hasn't finished in the points. Oh, Fittipaldi and Michael chase Montoya. And you can see with every corner, they inch a little closer forward.
There's no doubt, Paul, they're catching him. Both of these 2 Swift Ford-powered cars from Newman Haas are making up ground.
Oh, boy,
PJ
big
Jones.
hit for PJ. He was running 11th and, in fact, was in there with Michel Jourdain Jr. And now this off course. No doubt they'll leave that car there. Now, these gravel pits have been claiming the cars. Course conditions are changing rather constantly here. And, of course, every time somebody drops a wheel off one side, they spray that fine gravel up onto the race course. Here it is, Parker.
We'll see if we can see what happened. He just got in there too and slid straight off.
Yeah, that had nothing to do with gravel on the racetrack. That's just overcooking a corner. Pat Patrick, the car owner, for P.J. Jones and for Adrian Fernandez.
That's a long, lonely walk back up to the pits.
Up the hill and down the pit straight, you got a view out the back end of Montoya's car. It's what he's seen in his rearview mirrors. I'm sure he doesn't like it. Fittipaldi and Andretti, the powerhouse of Newman Haas, in their closing.
One of the things we stumbled upon this weekend, Paul, in one of our earlier shows, is that we think Swift, and particularly Newman Haas with their Havoline shocks, is doing something that is very, very interesting. As the cars roll into the corner and displace fluid from the outside shock, that fluid's transferred to the inside shock absorber, holding the inside wheels down on the ground. This would give you more grip at the front of the car, and also if it's employed at the back of the car, and overall give you better lap times. Now, I haven't been able to get a close look at it because they keep shooing me out of the tent every time I get close, but I would suspect that besides having two excellent drivers and a great team behind them, they've got a slight mechanical advantage that the rest of the teams here haven't exploited yet.
Michael Andretti, his teammate Christian ahead. Continue to work on Juan Montoya. Juan suffering with some form of gear pops problem. The gearbox, at first they thought it was shift linkage. Now they kind of feel like it may be in the gearbox. But as Chip Ganassi put it, sometimes he has all the gears he wants, sometimes he doesn't. Next pit stops expected for most at the 44th through the 47th lap, most of the field at the 47th. Remember, Christian Fittipaldi, though, seems to be getting a full 4 miles at least more than everybody else. He's expected in on the 48th, 55 laps the distance.
And as Christian and Michael hunt down Montoya, Chip Ganassi has just radioed to Juan to go up on the fuel. He's conserved enough through the beginning of the race that they're trying to give him every horsepower advantage they can because he's losing time now, under braking, trying to get those downshifts done without damaging the gearbox. But you can see, Paul, they have got a target squarely in front of them. I'm sorry, it was a bad pun, but what the heck. And Christian and Michael know what they have to do. It's very different when you can actually see the competitor in front of you versus having just some time interval. And Christian, and you know, is trying to get as close to Juan as possible because he wants to lead this race and score his first victory.
Christian is inspired now with Montoya as the target just ahead. Michael Andretti now can get a glimpse from time to time of Montoya as well, especially when they climb the hills here.
Coming down through the carousel, almost 4 G's of lateral cornering force there. Flat through the cake at 190 miles an hour. He's not having any problems at all on the upshifts, but listen on the downshifts here. You can hear that last shift didn't engage very smoothly. See if we can pick it up here as he comes into turn 14. Yeah, he's still having the same problem, Paul. He's downshifting when he's 2/3 of the way around the corner trying to baby that gearbox.
A little further back in the field, Paul Tracy being chased by Adrian Fernandez, who's back at 5th place.
15 laps remaining, -8 plus 0.5.
Radio communication to Paul Tracy. They're both trying to get around Richie Hearn. Richie lets him past. Now, there is some sort of electronic bug in the distribution of the scoring system. It's not to say that CART isn't scoring it accurately. It's just that the system has changed. And as a result, we're not able to put up quite as much information as we would like. Fernandez, station 5 again, moves to the inside, grabs the position from Tracy.
That's okay, just keep on him, keep on him.
That's the same move we saw Adrian pull on Christian earlier. He got in a little bit of trouble with Michael trying that, but he didn't look down the inside. But you can hear Barry Green talking to Paul Tracy. trying to keep him focused, make sure that he doesn't get rattled by that pass. You can already see Adrian Fernandez has pulled out a fairly good lead in just a few corners over Paul Tracy.
Well, Fernandez, once he's around Tracy, he's looking pretty good. His next target will be DeFerrin. I'll take you back up to the front of the field now. Montoya, Fittipaldi, Andretti. 41 complete, 55 the distance. Montoya feeling some heat, but at least seems to have stabilized a little bit as he holds off Christian Fittipaldi. Michael is there too.
With Montoya's being able to go up on the power, it looks now that last lap that Christian was only able to make up about 1/10 of a second. The interval on the last time through the timing lights was 1.4 seconds. Now remember, under braking, it'll look like it decreases because the speeds are lower down the straightaway, so it'll lengthen, but the time interval remains the same. But these two have now managed to pull away from Michael, a gap of about 2.2 seconds.
And partner, speaking of Michael Andretti, they have spoken with him on the radio and they asked him, Michael, can you go one more stint on those tires? Obviously they were scheming to see if they could make a quicker pit stop. He said, no, when I come in, I'll want 4 new ones.
Well, remember, that's a strategy that paid off at St. Louis, but I think Elkhart Lake is so abrasive and so difficult.
Jill DeFerrin off course, and off course from 4th.
And Paul, the crew was just going over the wall. They were going to bring him in on this lap. Fuel only, no tires was the plan. Don't know what's happened to Gilles.
Suddenly and quickly, with a lot of smoke coming out of the back end, Jill DeFerrin off the end of the course. Another change up at the front of the order. That will bring Fernandez up into 4th, Paul Tracy up to 5th. Fittipaldi still nibbles on Montoya.
And it's important to realize it's just not the top RPMs and speed that are creating all these engine problems. It's the fact that they're pulling from very low RPMs up to the top RPM so many times on this 4-mile track. When we get to Michigan, they'll be up at top RPM almost the entire time with just a small RPM drop, but it's the long pulls up and all the downshifts down that put so much internal stress on these power plants. And on that last lap, Christian Fittipaldi was able to ease up another 1/10 of a second, still holding just over 1.4 seconds. I think catching Montoya and passing him might be 2 entirely different tasks, Paul.
Well, Jill DeFerrin with only his 2nd DNF of the year with Walker Racing. Something that may, in fact, affect his positioning in the points. Montoya now pulling out a bit of an interval, though not much. That camera looking out the back tends to foreshorten and push the car behind him back. Now, from time to time, I'm also seeing what looks to be a puff of blue coming around there, which might be a further indication of a problem at the back end of Montoya's car. What happened with Jill DeFerrin? Well, perhaps we can get this update.
Derek Walker can tell us, was it a motor problem?
It looks like that, Gary. Until we get it back, we won't know for sure, but something's went bad on it.
After working their way up to 2nd in points, this has got to be a crushing blow, but still, midpoint of the season. Thanks, Derek.
Derek Walker showing the same hesitation that many show. You don't want to be going after the engine department too quick. Remember the multi-million-dollar effort that the engine manufacturers make, so often it's either a vague answer or one that kind of turns you away from any possibility of the engine.
And I think that occasional smoke that we're seeing off the back of Montoya's car is when the car's in its heaviest aerodynamic downloading, and I think it's just the skid plate momentarily touching the bottom of the ground. At least that's what I would be hoping for, and certainly Chip Ganassi and Juan Montoya.
Now, I want to tell you that with the extensive red flag and the restart at the start of this race, we are not going to be able to cover the closing laps of this race lap by lap for you. We're at 43:55, the scheduled distance, so the actual finish is about 20 minutes away. What we are going to do is go are going to come back here for the finish of this race, and also hopefully in the interval, should anything happen or change, we will try to give you whatever updates we can. But again, because of the long red flag situation with 2 different accidents on the first lap, well, that has pushed us well back. Don't forget, too, coverage in 1 week. The Toronto Indy, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and that coverage will be on ABC Sports. And ABC Sports is online at ESPN.com. That's part of the GO Network. So the Greater Milwaukee Open will be coming up next, and then we'll return here, give you the finish. Nothing has changed on the race course, though the interval from Montoya to Fittipaldi now has come down to about 2.6 sessions. I have to tell you that we and the broadcast team feel just as badly as you do when this sort of thing happens, but the allotted time sits there, and when you can nibble into the next show a little bit, we can, but you can't go 20 minutes into it. We will come back. They'll keep track of it at ABC Control in New York. So with the leader being Montoya, we'll be back in just a bit. Back at Road America, Juan Montoya continues to try to thread his way through traffic. He should be in any time now. Radio communication's gotten pretty frantic. Robbie Gordon locked it up, almost lost it coming off of 14. Certainly lost the momentum. Fittipaldi comes up the hill as he continues his pursuit of Montoya.
And as we've watched this battle, Montoya's been able to stretch it out. Has been able to stretch it out to 1.6 seconds, so he's picked up a few tenths. Montoya, as we go to the onboards every once in a while, still having a problem getting the downshifts completed, coming into these lower speed corners.
Well, it'll become a battle of the pit crews once again. You've heard the call for Montoya. Fittipaldi about 1.5 seconds back. Michael Andretti 3.5 seconds back, both clearly within view. Only interruption out there is Robbie Gordon, who sits in between Fittipaldi and Andretti. He certainly won't be a factor. Robbie will always pull over, give plenty of clear space to the leaders as they come through.
Fastest car on the track right now is Adrian Fernandez down in the 1:42 second range. It's nearly 2 seconds quicker than the laps that Montoya are turning at this point. But he's got a huge gap to the front of 15 seconds that he has to overcome in the next 10 laps.
On the 45th lap, running 6, Max Pappas in and out. Routine stop. Montoya down on the backside. Fittipaldi right there now. Only question is what Newman Haas's strategy will be. Michael Andretti might be the first in, Jan.
Well, the interesting thing, remember I told you when they asked him if he needed tires and he said he did? They are set up down here on pit road and they have no tires over the wall. So Michael may in fact be trying to go. Christian Fittipaldi is set up behind with tires.
They're both on the way, Jan. Montoya is on the way into the pits with Fittipaldi coming right up the hill right behind him. He followed him in. Let's go to Gary Gerald. Michael came in too.
Well, here they come. We can see the lead car, Montoya. Everybody waving. All three of these cars right together on pit road. Okay, nice. Will it be fuel only? There are tires there, and they immediately go to work with those high-dollar air guns. Behind them, we see Michael Andretti. So the battle in the pits is underway.
Ready? Go, go, go.
Montoya is the first to roll on turn 1. There goes Christian Fittipaldi. There goes Michael, just like that.
And Michael Andretti was 8.9, so they saved a little time, but did they get a spot?
They saved time. They got no spots at all. Front of the order remains the same. Fittipaldi out in pursuit of Montoya.
And as fast as Adrian Fernandez was the last few laps, if Michael did not take on tires, with the rate that Adrian was catching up to this lead group, it could create a problem for Michael in the last few laps of this race.
Now, Greg Moore is in there, but remember, he stopped late last time. You expect the same thing again. Moore currently, though, has split Fittipaldi and Andretti and sits in third place. Oh! He continues to struggle with the car. Now both Fittipaldi and Moore are right there.
And on full tanks with cold tires, having a gearbox problem is not what you want. Christian Fittipaldi can smell the problem now, Paul. He's going to try to pull up and do everything he can and take advantage of Juan Montoya, but Juan is unflappable. You can see he's already pulled the gap back out now, coming through the carousel, headed down towards the King.
Greg Moore, yet to come in, low on fuel, about 270 pounds lighter, one would guess, in that car. That will give him a little bit of a speed advantage. He closes on Fittipaldi. Fittipaldi closes on Montoya. Michael Andretti closes in. Battle at the front tightens up.
I would expect Michael to stay with this group for the next couple laps until the drivers in front of him's tires come in, but then I think he's going to slowly fall back, not having the advantage of a fresh set of Firestones. Well, I couldn't say that 10 times fast if I wanted to.
Greg Moore keeps it out. He has been able, like Fittipaldi did in the early going, been able to go a lap or two further. Christian Fittipaldi now 1.2 seconds back, Jan Bikas.
And Paul, I'm not sure if you saw it or not, but Christian Fittipaldi had tires on pit road. They pulled them back at the last minute. He also did not change tires, so both Newman Haas cars on their second stint of Firestones.
No, good news. That's good information to know. Remember, Michael Andretti at St. Louis ran a double stint. Tires working very well. The car and the tires liking one another.
Well, I think that's good news for Juan Montoya, Paul, because I would expect over the next lap or two, even with the gearbox problems, if he's on a fresh set of tires, he has to have a speed advantage over the two Newman Haas cars.
Montoya, Fittipaldi pursuing. Greg Moore, again, should be in for a stop shortly. Then Michael Andretti, Adrian Fernandez is fifth. Paul Tracy is sixth, and Max Pappas, who, remember, had to go to the backup car with that first lap incident. Tony Kanaan is eighth. Ninth is Michel Jourdain Jr., and Robbie Gordon is 10th. So it is still Montoya, though the fight at the front is very tight indeed. Christian Fittipaldi appears to have a strong car. Montoya appears to be lame. This is Paul Page. We're back at Road America with the Kart FedEx Championship Series. Juan Montoya finally had the whole gearbox go just about 3 minutes ago. All of the leaders made routine stops. The front of the field did not change. It was Montoya, then Fittipaldi, then Michael Andretti. But then suddenly the gearbox finally let go. We had told you they were having trouble. As a result, Christian Fittipaldi is the leader. His teammate Michael Andretti is 2.2 seconds back. Christian Fittipaldi is just 5 laps away, 20 miles from a potential first win in the series. We will be back for the finish. But now let's send you back down the road to the Greater Milwaukee Open and Mike Tirico. Mike? Back at Road America, Christian Fittipaldi perhaps looking at a first victory. Only his teammate Michael, who is 3 seconds back, can spoil it. Montoya is out. Gary Gerald's with him.
What has been a storybook season for the rookie has taken a downward spiral all of a sudden. You had gearbox for a long time. How difficult was it to nurse those problems?
But it was difficult because second and third gear, only when I had traction, it would work. If I would go off the throttle, just get like neutral. So I would have to go like in fourth gear, and just when I was putting the power, I would go down. And sometimes we just jump into first gear or into neutral. That's why he's putting the back straight. Went back to fifth and jumped to first and just got me around.
The fact that you were able to make it last as long as it did you think you might be able to get to the end of this race?
Oh yeah, you know, we're not that far. We're about 8 laps to go. And we still have the lead, you know, so the car was brilliant, you know. We could, without that, we'd have beat them by ages, but we didn't.
Thank you, Juan.
Okay.
Juan Montoya with the first did not finish DNF of his kart career. Is it going to be a first victory of his kart career for Christian Fittipaldi? No one could be more deserving for a win. He has waited so very long for it. The only spoiler in this camp could be, in fact, in the camp, Michael Andretti. But he's been about 3 seconds back. And remember, both of the Newman Haas cars, Fittipaldi and Andretti, did not change tires on the last stop. So one would assume that they are on some sort of an equal footing.
Well, that would be the assumption, and they have a nearly 12-second lead over Adrian Fernandez in third place. But Christian Fittipaldi has been pulling out a little bit of ground every single lap. You know that he's energized. He's very, very focused. The worst thing he could do at this point would be to slow down and lose concentration. He still wants to push hard to make sure that he remains in the rhythm, in the groove for his first victory.
Ford's first, second, and third. Max Pappas, remember, climbed into his backup car after the off. Almost looked like Gidley landed right on top of the car at one point. But Max climbed out into his backup car when they got the race started. A restart, but they went from 0 laps. And Max has climbed his way up to 5th place now. Robbie Gordon has made it up to 8th. So Christian Fittipaldi, hopefully, is looking at the very first win of his career. We'll be back. This is Paul Page. We are back at Road America. 53 laps are complete for the new leader of the race, Christian Fittipaldi. Michael Andretti is in 2nd place, 3.5 seconds behind his teammate. Juan Montoya suffered problems with the gearbox that finally proved to be fatal to the car. Montoya was out. He said he thought he could go ahead and win this thing if only he could have kept the car under him, and so he suffered his first DNF of his Champ Car career. There is the field summary at this point with a special note of Max Pappas in his backup car sitting up there in 5th after having a car land on top of him in the aborted start. They moved to the backup car, got it to 5th. Christian Fittipaldi looking for his first career win. This is his 72nd start in the series. But Parker, this is a track that has been good for first wins. Jacques Villeneuve scored his first here. Dario Franchitti a year ago, his first. He is on his final lap. He's seen the white flag.
What a great year for Christian Fittipaldi. He got his first pole position in his home of Rio in Brazil. And now finally he can see this dream come to fruition here at Elkhart Lake Road America, Wisconsin. This is the time where the best person you can have behind you is your teammate. He's got a 3.5 second lead. He knows that he can breathe a little bit. It's when the driver starts to hear sounds, rattles, shakes that he hasn't noticed the entire race. You say a silent prayer or maybe even out loud to make sure this thing can get to the checkered flag. There's going to be a lot of jubilation and a lot of emotion with only 2 miles to go at Road America.
Not long now to what may be the second win for Newman Haas this year. The first 1-2 for Newman Haas since Detroit in June of 1996. But the most important of all, a final long straightaway run for Christian Fittipaldi. The young Brazilian out of that magnificent racing family. His uncle Emerson, his father Wilson, the crew. You think they're holding their breath in that area? Christian Fittipaldi leads it. 72 starts, 1 final turn, climb the hill. Michael is still there, but well back. It looks like it's going to belong to Christian all alone. They come up the hill. Christian Fittipaldi, the elation in that cockpit is going to be awesome. He's finally done it. Christian Fittipaldi becomes the 7th different winner in 10 races this year and the 5th driver to score his first victory at Road America. Christian Fittipaldi, the winner. Now we'll send you back to the Greater Milwaukee Open and Mike Tirico.
Okay, I need wet towels and a quick lift. Let's go to victory lane. Way to go, Tiffany! Yes! Yes! Thanks, guys. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much. Thanks for being behind me and supporting me. Thank you very much.
It's been a long time coming, friend. Long time coming.
Thank you. Thank you very much, in fact.
Yeah, Robbie, I finished the race.
Hey.
We're in the top 10.
Given today, that is a substantial accomplishment.
Oh, absolutely. I look at Richie Hearn. I'm 10th. Yay.
I like a guy who takes a joy out of it like that. So look at Christian.
I drive a slow victory lap, too.
You bet.
Enjoy every moment of it.
Yeah.
Christian's got his visor open, wiping the tears from his eyes as he's driving down the back straight.
Well, they got Michael in Victory Lane.
Christian's still messing around.
He just came out of the kink, Gary. He's headed down towards Canada.
All right.
But he's wiping the tears out of his visor.
Oh, I can only imagine.
Oh, man. You can see that smile from 100 yards away. I have never seen a driver savor a victory lap like Christian Fittipaldi and celebrate in victory lane, but he deserves it. He has finally won in the Champ Cars. Gary Gerald?
Well, it's an eagle, the symbol of the trophy here at the Texaco Havoline 200 at Road America. For Christian Fittipaldi, Christian, you have waited so long for this moment. What are you feeling right now?
Don't even remind me of that. Well, obviously, I'm really, really happy. I'm very thankful also for the whole team that stood behind me. I went through some very rough years, and I definitely owe a lot to them. Kmart has supported me a lot, and today was a great day for all of us, and I'm really, really happy. I'm happy that the car worked very well. The engine, the Ford engine, was absolutely perfect.
Terrific, huh?
So that's it.
Did you know that Montoya was having gearbox problems? That would be something you could pounce on?
I could see that I was catching him a lot under braking. I knew that there was something wrong. I just have to keep my pace and keep on going.
What kind of a celebration are we going to see here?
Pretty wild one. I guarantee you.
Carl? Listen, we're really happy about this. It's fabulous, fabulous. And, you know, it's Texaco's Haviline's race here, which is wonderful to give them the 1-2. And for everybody, and for Kmart, of course. And that Ford engine really ran with everybody. And I've got to thank Ford for the reliability and the power for qualifying and the race.
You and this team have stayed behind this guy through a lot of adversity. Has it been difficult?
Well, no. I've always believed he's had, you know, he's been close, and it certainly this year he's been there, and it came through for him this week, and I'm happy for him. I'm happy for all the team and sponsors and everyone.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Let it go, Carl.
Well, Michael Andretti, it's great to be on the podium. It's great to collect championship points, but there's got to be a little different emotion here because you're in second place this time and your teammate finally is able to break through.
Well, first I want to congratulate Christian. He did a good job. They did a better job. We made a change on our car and he didn't, and it worked for him. And you know, I made a mistake, and we made a little bit of a wrong call on the pit stop. But you know, we tried, but we came up short. But it was a big day for the whole Kmart Texaco team. Huge, you know, getting 1-2, and Ford finishing 1-2-3. I mean, it says something about the engine, and you know, I mean, this is a horsepower track. That says something about the engine in the back. But we tried not to take tires on the last stop, which might have worked, but Moore got between me and Christian, and that screwed up the whole thing because I couldn't take advantage of them being on cold tires. So we'll never know if that would have been the right thing to do.
How about from the championship standpoint? Were you aware that Montoya was in jeopardy of falling out?
I didn't know he was in jeopardy of it, but I saw him drop out right in front of us. So then we knew that we just had to bring it home, make sure we get as many points as we could to try to catch up to the Juan. He's had a good year so far. It was about time he had a little bad luck.
I think we got a new ball game going to the second half of this season. What do you think?
You better believe it.